Today, I want to discuss and demonstrate Ethiopian pentatonic scales and divulge a unique secret that I happened upon after learning them. I have never heard this secret mentioned anywhere else. Did I discover it? Well, nobody showed it to me, but I can't be certain that someone else hadn't already come across it and kept it for themselves. The secret will be revealed later in the video. It's not a cliffhanger, it's real. Please subscribe below, help my channel grow. It's been really tough for me to get this thing up there and get this out to more people, so you subscribing and hitting the notification bell does help a lot. Or consider joining my Patreon page, High Castle Conservatory, to get exclusive learning on all things music production, theory, songwriting, etc. Let me preface this lesson with the disclaimer that I am by no means an expert on Ethiopian music, its history, nor its essence and form and nuance. For your reference, there is a fantastic series of releases called the Ethiopiques, which has now grown to 30 volumes, chronicling gems from the golden era of recorded music of the 60s and 70s in Ethiopia. At that time, rock, pop, blues, funk, jazz from the US and Europe invaded the international airwaves and became a major influence on the sound of these international recordings. Since this era was prior to MIDI and digital synthesizers, the recordings were made solely with live musicians. The golden era came to a relatively abrupt end universally in the early 80s when digital synthesizers and the ability to artificially sequence music with MIDI was invented and multiplied upon the face of the earth. The recordings lost their magic, giving way to a tinty artificial roboticism, and many of the instruments were now fake. The warm-sounding analog recordings and live performances with a room full of seasoned studio musicians were gone. I presume the convenience of producing music with synthesizers and MIDI was far less expensive and served as a primary motive for this unfortunate change. The 80s also saw a severe economic downturn in many third world countries, as the ravages of modern globalization were now clamping down at full force. In Ethiopia specifically, there was a horrendous famine in the early 80s that must have necessarily deprioritized luxuries such as recorded music. As I mentioned, I am no expert on Ethiopian music, but it appears to me that this unique music from the 60s and 70s is quite different from the older, traditional Ethiopian music from various regions of the country. And as I've already said, it was highly influenced by American and European rock, funk, blues, jazz, and pop. I was first introduced to Ethiopian music when I was playing bass on tour with the Secret Chiefs 3. Trey had recorded a song on the Secret Chiefs 3 album Book M called Safina, which is actually a cover of an Ethiopian tune from 1977 called Musawi Silt by the Walias band. This originally appeared on a wonderful, now out-of-print compilation called Ethiopian Groove, which was eventually absorbed and re-released by the Ethiopiques catalog and appears as Volume 13. Secret Chiefs 3 were set to play the song live, so I learned it, and it sparked in me a curiosity about this music, and I spent some time diving into the scales and their applications. Later in this video, I will demonstrate Musawi Silt and tell a fun story about that tour. As some of you may know, I ended up composing and recording a very involved collage-type tune portraying my oddball take on Ethiopian music, which appears on the Estradasphere album Quadrupus as the song A Car Ride in Idealistic Ethiopia. This track is basically me kind of fantasizing about the modern progressive music that might be coming out of Ethiopia had it not been ravaged by hardship and instead had flourished. So the listener's driving in a car in this parallel universe Ethiopia, flipping through the radio dial to find all this never-before-heard, modern-sounding Ethiopian prog or experimental music, for lack of a better term, but that's the basic idea. In Ethiopian music of the 60s and 70s, they often used one of two unique pentatonic scales. Pentatonic means 5 notes, so these scales do contain 5 notes. Most of us are familiar with the minor pentatonic scale that is so common in Western music and is the basis of rock and blues. So that's the A minor pentatonic. We've all heard that a million times. The scale has its roots that trace back to ancient Chinese music and can also be found in African and certain Greek music and lots of other places of antiquity. Every minor pentatonic scale has what's called its relative major pentatonic. So if we're in A minor, we just memorize this fact that you move up a minor third from A and play a major chord. That's the relative major. So if we're in A minor, the relative major is C major. But the thing is that pentatonic scale we just played can still be played from that C major. We maybe started over so it goes starts from C instead of A, but if you look, it's the same notes. So C major and the relative minor is A. Anyway, these are the same notes, but you can hear there's a different mood imparted when it's from the A minor. So when it's from the C major, when it's from the A minor, but exactly the same notes. Once again, to find a relative minor from a major chord, we go down a minor third. And inversely, to find a relative major from a minor chord, we go up a minor third. There are two main Ethiopian pentatonic scales that I hear used frequently, and they are a little different and more exotic than that standard pentatonic that we're accustomed to. The first and most common version of the Ethiopian pentatonic scale is called Tezeta minor. If we play this scale in A, we have the notes A, B, C, E, F, and then A is the octave. So it's 5 unique notes, then repeats. The unique sound of this scale is just as much derived from the notes that you don't play as the ones you do. In this scale, we skip over D, so there is no fourth whatsoever above that root of A. See, we skip this note and go straight to here. And we don't almost ever play that note. So we skip that one, and then we also skip over the 7th. There's no major or minor 7th. So we skip over the 4th, which is D. We skip over the 7th and go straight up to A. So I think the scale is very much defined by those spaces. Most other scales don't leave a big gap right there, so that really has a cool sound. Gives the listener a real sense of space and openness. This scale is usually used to make modal music, meaning there aren't a lot of chord changes or key changes, and it sticks to the one scale. So that would be an example of modal music. We can derive chords from the scales by stacking scale degrees. So the obvious one from this scale is going to be A minor. Sorry, let me get there. Oh. So the obvious one's going to be A minor. We also could do a minor add 9, which would be... We can also do F major by just moving this one note up. We can also do F major 7. We can do A minor add 9, as we've said. And that's pretty much about it. Let me give you a little example of this scale that we call A Tezeta minor. So that is the basic scale of A Tezeta minor, and you can make some cool comping patterns. If you just listen to this electric piano part I played in, gives you an idea of some of the chord clusters you can do, all based in A minor. The second most common Ethiopian pentatonic scale is called Bati minor sharp 4. I want you to learn this one in F minor instead of A minor for reasons I will disclose later in the video. If we play the scale in F minor, we get the following notes: F, G sharp, B, C, E, and that's it, and then it repeats to the octave F, so it's another 5-note scale. This 5-note sequence gives a darker and more mysterious sound than the previous Tezeta minor, which was... This one sounds more like this. So the reason is this scale omits a second degree, so it goes straight to the minor third from the root of F. It doesn't hit a second, it just goes straight to here. It also omits any type of 6. There's no major or minor 6. It skips the 6 and goes straight to the major 7. So if I play all the notes of the scale, we have this. You can see the gaping holes are G and D. So it leaves a similar type of hole as that other scale, but just in different places this time. This is a great scale, and it imparts a dark, exotic, funky minor sound and is unmatched in mood by any typical device employed in Western music. We can make chords also by stacking scale degrees, usually by taking every other note of a scale, but any note in the scale is fair game, so every other note would give F minor is the basic of this Bati minor sharp 4 scale. We also have a diminished triad available to us. Instead of the minor chord, we also have a minor with a major 7, which is an awesome chord. You know I love that one. We also have a G sharp augmented. Even a G13. There's no G, but G13 flat 9. Even though G, which would be the major second, is not included in this scale, we can add the note as if it were stated in parentheses to give some melodic flexibility. We may find that melodies benefit from using this note sparsely and in passing, So yeah, you could definitely sprinkle that G in even though it's not officially in the scale. So that would look like this: F, G, G sharp, B, C, E, F. Give you an example of some soloing in this Bati minor sharp 4. So we're going to have our root as F instead of A minor. This scale. The A minor we were doing for the other scale, the Tezeta. But now we're doing F minor. So, just going to do some screwing around here soloing just to give you the vibe of it. Definitely a cool, dark mood on that scale that is very unique to our Western ears. Let me demonstrate the song Musawi Silt, which was covered by the Secret Chiefs 3 as Safina. The groove can be counted in 6. I didn't spend much time on the MIDI drum sequence here, since this is just a crude demonstration. Listen and try to hear the count in 6. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not too hard to count. The song uses the Tezeta minor mode, and I'm going to play it in A minor, although I think the original key is B minor. So A, Tezeta minor. has this great funky bass line and a drum groove that almost feels like it ignores every other downbeat a bit, which does help obscure the meter. If downbeats are always in obvious places, the rhythm can get boring. Adding this rhythmic ambiguity is a nice way to spice up rhythm sections and compositions. Listen to this bass line. Played on my hollow body sounded like this. Remember how I said the instruments need to be restricted to those 5 pentatonic notes? Well, bass is an instrument that can, as I have said before, get away with murder. Due to its unique place in the low end of the frequency spectrum, it can get away with playing notes that instruments on the higher spectrum could not. In this case, the bass starts on the root, slides down to E, then F, and then climbs up chromatically, G, G sharp, and those 2 notes are not in the scale. Every other note is, but the G can get away with doing these notes and get away with it. It sounds like this. It starts over. The chromatic run is not in the scale, but the bass can stealthily go there without obviously breaching the strict pentatonic mandate. I would not recommend letting the other instruments have this liberty, or it will quickly turn into a bad funk jam. The rhythm of this melody is hard to count, so I'm just going to play it sort of freely with a rhythmic liberty. It's just I haven't practiced it, and I don't know exactly where all the accents fall. So I'm just going to kind of loosely play this Musawi Silt melody to demonstrate this. What did they call the scale again? It's a Tezeta minor mode in A, which is these notes. All right, here is a Musicawi Silt melody. That's the vibe of the Tezeta minor in A. So we played this song with Secret Chiefs 3. I was playing bass, and my band Estradasphere was also the opening band for that tour. I think this song was an encore, and most of Estradasphere would come up on stage and join Secret Chiefs 3 for that last song. John Hooley did the main solo on tenor sax, and for those who know John Hooley, he's an incredible soloist. So he was given this task to, play this simple pentatonic scale. But for any of you who know John Hooley, he's such an incredible improviser, but he might not particularly like getting limited. But what he's being asked to do here was play 5 notes. I think for the first couple shows, he eventually just kind of ripped the roof off the thing and, was doing a lot of other chromatic notes with it. And I think it was a couple days into the tour that Trey pulled him aside and, it was nothing hostile at all. It was just more of a learning experience. And he's like, yeah, John, I want you to do what you're doing. You're doing great, but I want you to stick to those 5 notes of the scale. And after that, he was able to do it. It wasn't an easy thing for him because asking great, soloing musicians to limit themselves to stuff can be a little tough. But man, I think there's some videos out there from that tour. But I think we all learned a lot being on that tour. It shows how restricting things can be good, and there is a certain freedom to that limitation because as humans, we're finite beings. We can't live in that infinity. So sometimes when you limit the parameters a little more, you might take it in a direction you wouldn't have otherwise done. Okay, so I've been promising to divulge a secret here, something that occurred to me after studying these two Ethiopian pentatonic scales. If you know me well, you know that I like to analyze things and see how they relate to other things I know, so I can learn to employ them in my compositions and have their general concept under my belt. One day, many years ago, after playing around for a while with these two Ethiopian pentatonic scales, the Tezeta minor and the Bati minor sharp 4, I was struck with a thought, a revelation. What if these two scales were related in a similar way that the relative major and minor are related? If C major has a relative minor of A, I wondered if there was a way to link the two Ethiopian scales. I knew that for this to work, I would need to find a way to make most of the notes true in both scales, but that's tough. So I have the Tezeta minor, which is from A, so that's this. And then I also have the Bati minor. If I did it in A, it's this. I started trying to find a way that the scales might relate. I used A Tezeta minor as the primary scale. I focused on the unique note clusters in the scale, which are B, C, E, F. It struck me that I needed to find the key center for a Bati minor scale that has those same note clusters of B, C, E, F. If I could find that, I could find two scales that relate. It jumped right off the page at me. I figured it out. Bati minor sharp 4 from the key of F has those same note clusters. That's why I asked you to learn it in F earlier. I didn't tell you why, but so it's not relative major minor. It's a little bit different, but let's review the two scales. So A Tezeta minor is, and those note clusters are, and Bati minor sharp 4 and F is this. But look at these clusters, the same. There is no other key than F for Bati minor sharp 4 that has more similar notes to the A Tezeta minor scale. I had discovered that the A Tezeta minor was related to F Bati minor sharp 4. The F is the major third below the root of A. This is the secret. From this discovery, we can make a general rule that is similar to the rule of relative major and minor in principle, but different in its result. In this case, I will call it relative Tezeta and relative Bati sharp 4. I don't know what else to call it. So from any Tezeta minor scale, let's say we're in A, if we go down a major third, we have the relative Bati minor sharp 4, F. So those are the two relatives. They're both minor chords, so we can't call it relative major minor. So from A Tezeta minor, its relative Bati is F minor. And if we were in F minor, Bati, its relative Tezeta, is up a major third, A minor. This is why, when I taught you the A Tezeta minor earlier, I had you learn it in F. It might not seem like a big deal to you, this revelation, this secret, but it opens up a bunch of possibilities. First of all, for soloing. If I'm soloing in this A Tezeta minor, if I wanted to, whoops, I hit a G there. You're not supposed to hit G. If I wanted to just randomly throw in some F Bati minor sharp 4, I could do that right there. And it doesn't really sound like it's that out of we can even hybridize the two scales and form a big grand new Ethiopian scale. So that would look like, it would basically be a harmonic minor with no fourth. What this does, though, is it opens up the fact that I have two, the A Tezeta minor and the F Bati minor sharp 4. It opens up chord progression possibilities. Remember how I said that there were not too many chord possibilities in either one of these scales, and it's more modal, sticking to one scale? This gives us the possibility of switching between these two scales of relative modes that I've uncovered, and gives more harmonic possibilities. This is absolutely not how it is employed in any Ethiopian music I have heard, but I found this discovery to be liberating. Make sure to take the time to listen to Estradasphere's track called A Car Ride in Idealistic Ethiopia to see all the diverse ways that I use this bridge between the two relative modes to my advantage to create some harmonic diversity where we're only supposed to have modal possibilities. Here to end, I will be soloing over 4 bars of the A Tezeta minor, followed by 4 bars of the Bati minor sharp 4, and then repeating that pattern. Please subscribe, join my Patreon, High Castle Conservatory. There's multiple tiers, but you can try the first or the second tier and see how you like it. But thanks for listening, and here's that solo. A Tezeta minor, F Bati minor sharp 4, alternating 4 bars of each.